Welcome to video 4 of Building Bridges, where we cover chapter 4 titled In and Out. Today I have 3 points to share with you, and I'm going to jump right into point number 1, which is we need to build bridges inside and outside the church building walls. In chapter 4, I share a story where I drove past literally a neighbor in need so I could get to another church meeting. Now, I'm not against having church meetings. I'm absolutely not against it. And sometimes there's a tension of how much time you're spending where. It's not just in bridge building efforts. And in that moment, I knew I was driving past a friend in need, and I knew I needed to do a little bit of a shift. You know, an old paradigm I used to have that I still think is pretty pervasive in the Christian community is this. It's just our job to get people to church and then let the smart people that are trained and in seminary, that went to seminary, let them reach them. And the thing is, we're supposed to be reaching people inside the church building as well as outside the church building. And you do not need to go to seminary, study Hebrew and Greek to be equipped to build bridges. I used to think that, and I think that falls back into some of my worthiness issues, like, God, you can't use me because I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough in the Bible. I don't know if you've thought any of those thoughts, but it's just not true. The only thing a bridge builder needs is a personal relationship with Jesus and willingness. That's it. You don't need a seminary degree, and I'm not diminishing people that have a seminary degree. Well, I want to lead us right into point 2, which is that God uses imperfect people to fulfill his perfect plan. You know, you do not have to have, as I said, a seminary degree. You do not have to be living a perfect life. Here's the big news flash. None of us are living perfect lives. If we were living perfect lives, we wouldn't need Jesus. You know, the cracks in our lives are opportunities where we can share the reality of Jesus in our life. And so point number 1 is that we need to be building bridges inside and outside the church building wall. Point 2 is that God uses imperfect people to fulfill his perfect plan. And point 3 is that people will believe our actions more than our words. And this is where I kind of talk a little bit about the hypocrite, the it factor. That if we say we love Jesus, but we don't love people, then the world will see hypocrisy. You know, I love this statement that my son Jake made years ago. And he said, church is like the locker room and the world is like the football game. Meaning we learn how to, you know, in our church community, we learn how to be disciples of Christ. And then we do that so we can get out into the world, onto the game, in the game. And now I really want to encourage some of you right now because, you know, I know that if you get out into the game, you might make some good plays and you might get hurt. I don't know about you, but in my very honest and earnest bridge building efforts, I have gotten injured on the ball field. And, you know, I just can go to God, get comfort from God, and then keep building. So often in American Christian churches, people come in, they love the worship, they love the teaching, they love the community, and that's where it ends. And we have to be really careful as Christians not to become consumers of Christianity, meaning just come to get fed. Now, if you're in a rough season, please don't mistake in what I'm saying. Go and keep getting ministered to. But there needs to be a time and a space where you say, I'm family now. I'm not just going to take, I'm going to give. Because true relationships have a nice balance of give and take. And the reality is that a lot of Christians have fallen asleep and become apathetic or just consumers of Christianity. And we don't need to be consumers, we need to be contributors, meaning bridge building inside and outside the church. You know, so often I got my mindset mixed up, so much like the parable of the Good Samaritan. And I really encourage you, this is a short video, so I'm not going to really go through it a lot, but I encourage you to go to Luke chapter 10, read for yourself the story of the Good Samaritan. Here's the quick overview, is that there was a neighbor in need, and the education, the really smart person walked right past them. The really religious person walked right past them in their need. But it was the least likely person that stopped and cared for the neighbor in need. And not only that, they didn't just pick the person up and bring them into oh, come to my church, and let my church pay for you. They used their own resource. The Good Samaritan used his own resources to care for his neighbor in need. Now, I believe God intentionally placed that because as we build bridges out, we're going to need our church family, church building, church support, church ministries. We need each other. It's not one or the other, it's both. But I think sometimes as Christians, we can just kind of say, well, that's my pastor's job, or that's the person that leads that ministry's job, forgetting it's our job to care and bridge. Now, this horribly sad statistic I read that only 2% of Christians share their faith. Now, if only 2% of Christians are sharing their faith and 60% of Americans won't go into a church building, do you see how vital it is that as Christians we wake up? We realize the church building is not a cruise ship, it's a fishing boat. We don't just go to church just to hear a good word and have great worship and meet cool people. We go because we're looking for people who are lost, to learn how to minister to people when we go out of the church building, to minister to people who are non-Christian and don't know the Lord. You know, this quote from Jen Hatmaker, I love it so much, and I'm going to break one of my own rules, but I'm going to say it as, if you're talking to a non-Christian, don't use Christianese. The majority of you watching this video are most likely Christian or considering it. And so I'm going to use this statement, and it has 2 Christianese words, but it's an awesome statement. Jen Hatmaker says, if we spend all of our time serving saved people, blessing blessed people, and discipling disciplined people, when will we have time to connect with the lost? Now, saved people means Christians, and lost people really means non-Christian. I do not recommend, by the way, you telling someone they're lost, because that could be a very caustic word and very aggressive word. Say, oh, you're lost, and they're like, I'm not lost. I mean, I could see myself going real ghetto quick if someone said that to me before I was a Christian, because again, it goes back to being an effective ambassador that uses language that's understandable. Now, as I close this video out, I want to share this story that was really powerful to me when I heard it. Last video I shared about Alan Hirsch, and I had the pure joy of listening to him speak. When I was sitting on the board at my old church, he came to speak to the leadership and the board of directors, and he shared this story, and I thought it was so cool. And I think it's a great example of what it looks like building bridges as a member of the church. If you're a Christian, you're part of the church. You don't need a building to be part of the church. Of what it looks like to build bridges out in the world. So I'm just going to give a broad overview of this story. That this one man who was a Christian had a friend who was a non-Christian, and he invited him on to go on a boat trip together. They went out on the boat trip, had a great day. At the end of the day, the man said to his friend, hey, listen, it's Sunday. I'm normally in church. Would it be okay if I read a couple Bible verses? Because that's what I normally do on Sunday. And his friend said, sure. So he did, and they basically said, hey, this was fun. You want to do this again next week? And they said, yeah. So they met again on the boat, on the water, on Sunday, and out of that friendship and bridge building became a boat church. Like, they met, it became huge. I don't know all the numbers and all that. I'm just doing a broad picture of the story. But he met a guy where he was at, where that man, the non-Christian, was comfortable. So what does that mean for you and I? We're going to need to go to places perhaps where we're not comfortable, wherever God tells us. Don't go somewhere where God did not tell you to go. But remembering that our comfort level is not the most important thing to be an effective bridge builder. So as I close this video today, here's the question. Where do you feel most comfortable building bridges inside the church building or outside the church building? There's no wrong answer because we need both. All right, I'll see you next video.